Well, my name is Betty Williamson. I'm the mother and the grandmother of the Williamson men. Of course, I was born on the farm, and so was my older sister. But we moved to town when I was 2.
My great-grandfather started selling cars when they were invented. So that was Ware Baker, and he lived in Indiana, rural Indiana, and he sold farm equipment to the farmers in the communities.
We sold farm-haul tractors and Cadillac cars to the same farmer. Back then, farmers could make money on a small farm. George started working for my dad, and it was about that time when George's father, who lived in Fort Wayne, who knew the man that was the district manager for the Cadillacs, he gave a franchise to my father, which was also George's business then. And so then George was the one that sold the Cadillacs. Our first allotment was 1.5 a month. George had big ideas, and he wanted to move to Florida. Decided he would go to work for the Cadillac dealer in Miami until the company could find us a dealership to buy. Of course, he brought me to Miami kicking and screaming because I had never lived in the city. I'd always lived in a small town.
He gets a franchise down in Lake Wales, Florida. So he and Betty moved with their 2 young sons, Ed and Tom. You know, had a long life there. That's basically where my dad grew up, all the way through high school, and then when he was in college. And then when he was graduating from college, his father, my grandfather, got the franchise in Miami.
So he said, well, I promised to go to California to work after I graduated from college.
But my grandfather said, I've got this new store, it's a great opportunity, and if you want to ride this train, you have to get on it in a number of days. So my dad left the job that he was going to be doing after college and went to what they used to call General Motors Dealer Sons School. Now it's General Motors Dealer Sons and Daughters School. At that time, you know, Kendall was like basically the boonies. So people thought, what are you going to do, you know, building a car store in the middle of all those, you know, palmetto trees.
And I vividly remember Ed saying to me that when they decided to come to Miami, that Nolan Brown thought that they had snookered George when they made this deal on Kendall Drive.
Back in the late 60s, Dadeland was there, but it was not air-conditioned or roofed over. And on our side of the street, there was scrub as far as the eye could see.
Tom was still in school when I came to work here. We opened up with 4 salesmen. We didn't push people. We sold cars with a lot of feelings.
I came down here from Ohio about 36 years ago. I came here as a technician. I'm still a technician. We didn't have the computer diagnostics that we have today.
I came over to work just for a short time, changing tires. I work construction, and things were slow, and a guy named Al Rodriguez said, hey, you want to come over and work for a while? And I said, yeah. So that was in 1976, and I've been here ever since. They added on to the dealership. They built a big body shop there.
Started here at Williamson Cadillac in 1978, and working in parts driver. Always enjoyed it here. And of course, there's other dealerships always out there looking and stuff, and from the other employees that have left, always want to come back to see how much nicer it is here.
I wanted to upgrade from where I was working, which was a small independent shop, and I put in an application, and I got lucky, I got hired. You come into work every morning, everybody say hi to you, and you know, you knew everybody in the dealership, we were all together. It was basically, you know, one big happy family.
When I came to Williamson Cadillac, I realized I was in a completely different type of atmosphere than I had ever been in the car business. Our managers were Connie Ryan, who just died, unfortunately, God bless his soul. We had Bill McEwen, who was the used car manager and also a great guy. And both of them were very principled kind of the way they ran their business. They cared a lot about maintaining what Mr. Williamson was trying to do. We had, I think, a total of 16 salesmen at the time. We all were more family than anything else, and we really bonded very well over the years. It's been that way for all these years.
I was a single mom with 3 kids at home to take care of, and I won a scholarship. And after I went to school, finished the scholarship, I found out that Mr. Williamson's secretary was retiring, and so I thought I would apply for the job. Then I waited almost 3 months for his reply. And finally one day he called me. I was terrified, but he was wonderful, and after about a half-hour interview, he stood up, shook my hand, and said, "You've got the job if you want it." When I first started here, Carol was more like a stay-at-home mom. Trey was still in school. In fact, I remember her making an E.T. costume for Trey. As Trey grew up and went on to college, she came into the dealership, and we had to find her an office. And Ed came to me one day and said, "Gee, you know, where are we going to put Carol?" And so we cleared out the supply room, put Carol in this little cubbyhole, and now she has a beautiful office upstairs. But she was his best and is his best ambassador.
I came to work here on March 23rd of 1987. I started as a used car salesperson and worked on my way up to a general sales manager. I sold a lot of cars, kept a lot of people happy, and I believe the family just saw that I was doing the right thing and the way they would like to do it, and I was fortunate to be able to move through the ranks and be where I'm at right now. I remember the ice scrapers that Mr. Williamson used to give away, and then he went on to do commercials of sitting on a bench out front of the old dealership on Kimball Drive, having a peanut butter and sandwich, and then for the Spanish commercial, he was having a medianoche.
Una medianoche.
We had plenty of storage space, but boy, it was out in the lot. You know, we had to take customers out in the lot, but sometimes the golf carts would break.
When I would leave school, I would go and push sandpaper at the body shop, pick up garbage, or whatever they told me to do. And when I graduated from high school in 1986, I came to work for the Williamsons. Greg Roll had a heart-to-heart with me and wanted me to learn the business, and he wanted me to become a technician. And he endorsed me 100% and really opened my doors to be the person I am today.
By the time I came along, my dad had taken over the business, and my grandfather's fantasy was to retire at age 55. So that's what he did, and then pretty much played golf for the rest of his life. I had 3 summer jobs in high school. First was a parts apprentice, I guess, or a parts boy, they would sometimes call it. Second summer I worked in the tower, which is the dispatch operation. And then the third summer I was the apprentice to the mechanic. I kind of joke that I'm CEO, Chief Emotional Officer, because it's my interest to make sure that people know that working for a family is different than working for some big corporate conglomerate. I am the continuation of the family and the family business, and I really do think of the employees as our family.
It was devastating to me to see it being knocked down. I grew up in that place. You know, I worked there all my life, and a second home, exactly what it was.
And then I helped again with a shovel when they started the new building.
You know, my dad would send me emails of photos of, you know, this crazy big building and how people were calling it a battleship and how big it looked and how you could, well, actually more like an aircraft carrier. You actually could have landed an airplane on the top of it before they built the elevator tower.
We moved the store in 3 days. That includes about $800,000 worth of parts inventory, a whole lot of vehicles, and a whole lot of equipment. And everybody pulled together, and it was kind of a 24/7 thing. And started on Friday, opened business on Monday, and kept right on rolling. So it was a pretty wild experience. I've never had an experience like that before.
What I thought was really neat about the dealership is that it is architecturally what Cadillac was trying to do at the time with their design aesthetic of the cars. The cars had become very creased and slick and sexy and sophisticated, marketing to like a young generation, you know, kind of a Zen simplicity in the way they were cut and look. Similarly, the building has that very same kind of clean, modern, Zen, high-impact aesthetic.
It was kind of weird, you know. First day driving in here, you had to park up the ramp, and I was like, wow, this is different, you know.
The biggest thing is that we have increased the traffic being here. The challenge was, can we drive those things up and down the ramps?
I was sort of awestruck. The other dealerships I had been to, first off, weren't this grand, weren't this large scale. Being treated and shaking hands with the owner when you walk in, that's a little different than most corporate settings. In most corporate settings, you'll walk in, and if you happen to see one of the managers, you're lucky.
My first impression of the Williamson family was in 2000. I was at a master dealer event, and the Williamsons were featured on probably a 5 or 10 minute video. And I just thought to myself, after listening to Ed and listening to Carol on the video, I didn't know them personally, but it was easy to tell that they were just great people, and I thought, boy, they must be really neat people to work for. I started at Williamson Cadillac in August of 2005.
We never thought in our wildest dream that we would ever be this big, you know. And the only reason that we've done as well as we have is because we've had great people behind us. Fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree, and I'm sure that everyone who works here feels the same way, because we've just had people that were right on top of it all and grew and didn't give up on the organization. When times were bad, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and that's the result of when you do the right thing and you do it well.